Hey, hi folks, it's Robert Earl here at the Eco Ranch in far west Texas, and you get to see something we don't show anybody. That's the inside of the dogs building. We built this building for the dogs initially, and then we were going to build, of course, our house on the outside, which is what we're doing now in all these videos. But in the meantime, this is my living room, sitting room, computer room, office, and since I snore so bad, it's a lot of times my bedroom. And I don't mind, but we don't show anybody the inside because it's messy. You can see boxes and stuff stacked all over here, and everything's got a purpose, believe it or not. It's a mess. What am I doing here? Hey, I'm doing something that you haven't seen me do before. I'm working on our mealworm farm. Ha-ha! We raise mealworms. And why do we raise mealworms? We raise them for the chickens. Our chickens don't get enough insects in we don't have enough greens for them, obviously, because we're in the desert. We don't have the insects or the greens. Now there's insects out here, don't get me wrong, there's lots of them, and they eat all they can, but they're not getting enough. So we're supplementing them with a fodder system which is not operational yet. I'm using a sprouter, and that'll probably be another video. The mealworm farm, that's this video. And then I'm going to probably do another video on something called a maggot trap. And you can research maggot trap right now on YouTube. There's 100 people that probably made better videos than I have. But I'm working on the mealworm farm right now, and I thought you might be interested to see what I'm doing. What I'm going to do is zoom in on what I'm doing here. You'll see my hands, but you won't see my face, so you're lucky. So let me get this thing set in and zoomed in, and I'll tell you if I keep my hands right about here, you can see me. Now what I've got is an old plastic container, and you know, you can use almost anything that you want. And I've got a little tiny tea strainer, I call it. I don't know what you'd really call it. It's a little tiny strainer. And what I'm doing is I'm straining out the mealworm crap. Now I know I'm starting in the middle here, but I'll get to the beginning eventually to tell you what I'm doing. I'm straining out the mealworm crap. Now what I'm going to be left with is going to be what I feed them, which is rolled oats. And I don't use Quaker oats or anything like that. I use rolled oats from the local feed store. That's $27 a bag at my feed store, and it's a lot more money if you buy rolled oats. Now, I should turn this so I can see. Bear with me a moment while I do that. Oh. Alright, now I can kind of show you what I'm doing here. What I'm left with after I do all that straining is there. You can see, I see the movement, so I know you can see the movement. All that moving in there are mealworms in various stages. There's no pupas in there, and most of them are young. I've strained out all the poop, and now all I'm left with is this. So let me take this and dump it. And I'm dumping it in this bin here, the outer bin. The inner bin's the one I'm working from. Now that's enough right there. What that little scoop that I just put in there would be enough for you to start your own mealworm farm. This, on the other hand, I apologize, I'm not real good at this. This is the poop, but you notice I've also got some rolled oats, oatmeal in there. So what I do is I just run it through, a second time. Like this. There you go. And I'm careful not to spill. I'm not too careful about spilling the first time because I'm going to do this second one. I'm careful not to spill. And you can see why I run it through a second time, because there's a couple mealworms in there. There's a bunch of eggs I know in there and a bunch of babies. So let me dump these. Now, what you're left with is what's mealworm poop, but it isn't really mealworm poop. In there are eggs. Now, you don't want to put the mealworm poop back in because you've just strained it all out. So I'm going to try something new, and we'll get into that right now. So for right now, you separate it. You can see I'm about a third of the way through this thing. I've got this much here.
The time is 4:00 p.m.
So what I do, I just reach into the existing rolled oats and mealworms and pick up that thing. I can see it moving. There's so many mealworms in there. Strain the poop out. It's a time-consuming job, so I'm watching videos while I do this. This is how I learn about farming, because I was not born a farmer, unless you want to call living in Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan, being a farmer. Run it through again. This time, I run it through and into there. Anything I've missed catches there. I do throw a little bit of poop back in. And so it goes until I'm done. Now what Debbie and I are going to do is we're going to do three new bins. And I've been waiting to do this, and today I just decided to do it. 3 new bins. We're already operating 6, and I'll show you those in a few minutes. But right now, I got to go through this and get my other 2 bins started. So I'll be back in a few minutes to tell you more about starting your own mealworm farm. And by the way, there is no odor at all, period. So it's a wonderful thing to have. It's a great source of protein. And it costs you a few carrots and some rolled oats. That bag of rolled oats I have will last me 6 to 8 months on the size operation we have. On you, 2 years. So I'll be back. Well, I'm back, and I have I've finished sifting through all of that worm poop, and I've finished. I got everything separated. I'll show you what I've done. I'm going to be behind the camera explaining the entire concept of a worm farm to you. Here is, and I again can't see, so now I can. Okay, here is a bucket full of what looks like worm poop, and it is essentially worm poop. The problem is, and the reason why we're doing this video and the reason why I had to do this today is this bucket is the main, or rather the box we were working on is the main box that sits below the beetles, the beetles that become the mealworms. Now those beetles are up there and they're having a good time, and they're mating, and the eggs are dropping. The eggs drop down, and I'll show you how the eggs drop down, and to a bucket that's to a container that's below the bucket that the beetles are in. So you've got not only the crap down, but the eggs are here. So I might have, and I'm not kidding here, I might have 1 million eggs in here. Now, ordinarily this would be just a great fertilizer, and even with the eggs in it, it'd be a great plant food, fertilizer, whatever you want to do with it, and the worms won't develop unless you have the absolute right conditions. So it'd be a great food fertilizer. However, we have to, I want to start these 3 new boxes that we've done. And again, I'm going to show you from behind the camera, and it'll be a little bit more explanatory. These are the rolled oats that I bought. If you look at them, they look like the instant oats, the quick oats you buy in the grocery store. And actually, if you don't have much money and you like oatmeal, you buy a $27 bag of rolled oats, and you can make your own oatmeal out of this. It's no problem. I wouldn't hesitate to eat it. I wouldn't hesitate to eat any of the animal quality, the feed quality foods, because all you might get is a stick or a piece of chaff or something in there. So let's go over, and I'm going to try to go over from behind the camera the components of a typical mealworm farm. Now I'm going to tell you 2 things before we go over there. Number 1, when you have to do work on the mealworm farm, it is labor intensive. Debbie puts in an hour to an hour and a half once a week on the 4 or 5 containers we had before I just added these 3. So it's an hour, hour and a half a week. It's a lot of little picky picking. Again, I'll show you that. It's and it's also labor intensive, because I just spent over an hour and a half sifting through all this crap here, and you have to sift through it periodically. So it's very, very labor intensive, number 1. Now, everybody gets the idea that I do everything. I do all this stuff. No. This is a cooperative effort between Debbie and I, and I've got to tell you, Debbie took over the mealworm farm, and she has run this mealworm farm for over a year, so I've had very little to do with it. I've done the sifting only because I know how to do it. I studied the videos, and when I sit down to do it, she's off doing something else. But this has been Debbie's thing, and she has done an absolutely fantastic job on keeping the mealworm farm up. She's fed the mealworms to the sick chicks and chickens. She's got them isolated and fed them the extra mealworms that have given them the protein that they need. She makes sure everybody gets an even amount of mealworms. Now, you know, when you got 19 chickens, or 22, it's difficult enough. Well, now we got about 95 out there, and she is just making sure that everybody gets their fair share. So Debbie does this. This is her thing. She's done a fantastic job. So I'm doing the video, but believe me, all the credit goes to her. Now let me get behind the camera, and I'm going to show you the components, and it should be fairly easy to figure out. Again, like I always say, I'm not very professional. Listen to the information. If you're looking for cinematography, go somewhere else. The information's what I give here, and it's free, and I'm happy to give it. Now hang on. Now, one of your components of a mealworm farm, your main component, is the beetles. And I'll be damned if I can think of the name of the beetles while I'm doing this, and I didn't think to look it up. But anyway, around all these fresh carrots that Debbie put in are the mealworms. Are the beetles. These beetles, they mate, they give us eggs, and the eggs hatch and become the mealworms, and at various sizes, that's where people would feed them to their lizards, or in my case, to the chickens. Now, I'm trying to lift this up because I want to show you without disturbing them too much. There we go. On the bottom of this bucket, I've taken and cut the bottom out, and I've put this is a stainless steel screen, just like your window screen, stainless steel. And you can see those things that are poking through there. Those are pieces of chaff, but they could just as easily be worm eggs or worms coming through. What happens is these characters lay their eggs. The eggs, as they waddle around, the eggs will fall through. The eggs fall through. They go down into the next bin, which this box here goes on top of this bin here, and I'll explain why it's set up this way in a second. So any mealworms that hatch, any babies that hatch, immediately are going to get down and out of the way and fall through that screening. They'll fall through into the bottom where they'll be safe. The eggs that fall through will fall through and they'll hatch. So what we're going to do now is get this ready to put the two pieces together. This, what I've put in here, is what I'm going to try to do with all that poop I filtered out, because I hate to throw a million eggs away. So let's do this. This is a huge bucket of poop. I'm just going to dump the bucket into there. Remember, it might have a million eggs in there, and it also may have some tiny, tiny mealworms in there. Now I put it on top of the oatmeal, and now I'm going to get that bucket of oatmeal. Put some of that on. And spread it out. Now, it needs carrots, so I'm going to cut this off and come back when I put carrots in everything. And we got the carrots set up. 1, 2, 3, 4 bins have got carrots in them. These are the bins that we worked on. We took this and filtered out all the worms and all the potential eggs. I divided the worms between this one, and this one. So I have now the worms that were in there, in whatever stage they're in, are here in these three. This one is going to receive all the eggs from here. So let me just take this with the screen on it and put it on top. And it's just exactly that simple. The eggs, or the tiny little almost microscopic worms, will fall through. Now some fell through here already, so we just take and go poke, poke, tap, 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 rather. That's the lid. Now, these other bins that were back here, I just moved the whole farm so you could see my farm. This one here works the same way. The adults go in here, the babies down there. And this one here, I believe Debbie said, is her pupa farm. So, you have your worms set up, and you've got 3 tiers essentially. You've got the adults here, you have the eggs here. Now they're going to grow up, you won't get all the eggs, they're going to pupate anyway and turn into pupas. So let's see if we can take a look at pupas. There'll be beetles in here too. Yes, those, see how close I can get, those are pupas. Now those will become beetles. You can see there's beetles in there already. So Debbie picks, what happens is, Debbie will go in this bucket, not this one, the one underneath. Take the pupas out, put the pupas in here. When she comes back on her weekly check, she will take the beetles out of here and put the beetles in here or also in here. These are both beetle pens, beetle boxes here. The beetles are in, they lay the eggs, falls down here, grow up. If anything pupates, it goes in here. That's as simple as it is. You get worms, 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 beetles, beetles, pupas. Notice the pupa one's not that big because you don't need a lot of space for pupas, they just sit there. But if you leave the pupas with the beetles will eat the pupas, so you want to take them out. Now that's as simple as I can make it. This little worm farm here that you see on my bed, that little worm farm will supply our chickens with extra protein no more than twice a week out of this. We need to make it a bit bigger. No more than twice a week, and we'll feed them the mealworms. The mealworm farm itself costs us virtually nothing. That bag, a $27 bag of 50-pound rolled oats, will last me about, in this here, about 6 months. And a bag of carrots, of course we won't keep one whole bag of carrots, but the equivalent of a bag of carrots will last us about 2 to 3 months. The carrots, somebody's going to ask, I know. The carrots are a source of moisture more than anything. You can put a potato in there, you can put an apple in there. I don't like things that oxidize. You can even put lettuce in, but in the humidity we have here, I wouldn't. The carrots have worked perfectly. They get in. They get into the carrots. This is a carrot and it's crawling with babies. I don't know if you can see any there or not. I can't see through the viewfinder. This is what they do to a carrot. They completely desiccate it. They get their moisture out of that. They actually eat the rolled oats. And they eat other things too, but I just I use rolled oats and I use carrot. And that's it. It's not simple, because farming is not simple. Don't let anybody tell you farming is easy. But it's just that simple to have the extra protein of the mealworm farm. It's just that simple. It's not a big deal. Wait till we get in the fodder system. That's going to be great. That's another video. That's down the road. But that is the mealworm farm. If you have any questions that I haven't covered, by all means, ask me. There are also, and this is a resource that I used. There are like 50 or 60 videos on YouTube about having a mealworm farm, raising your own mealworms. Go to them. Those people have more experience than we do here. I'm just telling you what they told me that we put into practice. Go and look at their stuff. Look at my stuff. I think mealworms are an absolute fantastic thing for you to have as an additional protein source for your chickens if you have to keep them in a coop and you're not pasturing them, you're not letting them free range, or if they're in a closed environment on concrete or anything like that. Fantastic. Some places it won't work, and don't look at the video. You don't need it. But if you need it like I do here in the desert, this is great. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm just going to remind you that the donate button's up there, and if you don't know why it's up there, I'm doing a video soon called The Donate Button. But for now, that's the Mealworm Farm, and this is Robert Earl at the Eco Ranch saying, see you later, guys. Thanks for watching.